Hello and welcome to our webcast for February 10, 2017. My name is Christian Debré and this is Amy Asbrook from Director of Toujours Vivant Not Dead Yet.
Hello.
I'm sorry for my voice, but I have a cough, so sorry. Toujours Vivant Not Dead Yet is a non-religious organization by and for people with disabilities and our allies. Our goal is to inform, unify, and give a voice to the disability rights opposition to assisted suicide, euthanasia, and other ending of life practices that discriminates against people with disabilities. Today's topics. Nursing home residents in Quebec organized to claim their right to community opposition.
Options.
Sorry. I'm feeling not so good, so sorry. Fact. Are not we making people endure terrible pain and suffering if we don't allow doctor to help them to die?
Okay.
Basically, the second subject is our main subject.
Yeah. Okay. So the first topic is nursing home residents in Quebec organized to claim their right to community options. A group of nursing home residents in Quebec has organized to provide mutual support and to call for community-based care options. So these are people who live in what in Quebec is known as the CHSLD, Centre Hospitalier de Soins de Longue Durée, and
which means
nursing home.
Nursing home, yes.
Yeah. And they are all people under 65 years of age who live in nursing homes because Quebec doesn't provide home care for people with intense care needs. So who need care more than a certain number of hours per month.
Yeah, it's kind of relatively easy to get some light help, but heavier help is more difficult to get.
Right, you can get some homemaking assistance, but if you need help with personal care, you can't get that, really. L'Alliance québécoise des citoyens hébergés, or to translate, the Quebec Alliance for Citizen-Residents, was established in December to give a voice to the 3,500 people with disabilities under age 65 who live in nursing homes and hospitals in Quebec. The founder, Jonathan Marchand, states on the group's Facebook page, quote, "We are currently being forced into institutional care due to the lack of home support services tailored to our needs. This has serious human, social, and financial consequences."
So it's basically the money doesn't follow the people.
Right, and this is not inevitable. This is a choice, a public policy choice that is made by Quebec. They could decide, instead of spending money to keep people in institutions, they could give that money to the person who could employ their own.
Or at least a part of this money, because it's nursing home are suitable for some kind of people.
Right, some people like it, but you know, a lot of people would rather live on their own and direct their own care.
Yeah.
Another quote from the website: "The current situation pushes victims to suicide to avoid institutionalization."
Yeah.
And that's certainly something that the American group, American Disabled for Attendant Programs Today, has often said. People have said they'd rather die than go back into institutions. And
yeah, because for some people, being in an institution sorry, is a kind of torture.
Right, exactly. Not just when there's abuse in an institution, but the daily regime is
the number
like a
one.
torture.
Yeah, because they have to wake up at a certain time, go to bathroom at another time, but at the same time, and to have a shower at a time, to get to sleep. They don't manage their own life. That's the trouble. Is very close to prison.
Right, exactly. And TVNDY has documented this problem of people being driven to suicide in 2015 when we interviewed Gallion Bhushan, who starved himself to death in large part because of a lack of employment and social supports.
It's a very, very important interview. Most of that we're talking about since the last 3 years are in this interview.
Right, exactly. He chose to stop treatment and stop eating and drinking and die of starvation and lack of, well, starvation because he drank. But
he was a very, very clever guy, and he chose to kill himself without any help. He just starved to death with some care from an hospital institution, so he doesn't suffer.
Right.
But it's what you could think about a reasonable suicide.
Right.
But when you heard the interview, it is not. He doesn't have any choice.
Right. Basically, he talked about the fact that if he believed that if he had been non-disabled, that they would not have let him starve himself to death.
Yes.
And that the reason they let him was because he was disabled. And that he was driven to this end by lack of options.
It was before the law.
Right. This was before the assisted suicide or euthanasia law came into effect in Quebec. So he, it isn't a choice that we are advocating, but he did make that choice, and it was his right to do that. Let's see, other disabled people have died after refusing treatment and sought euthanasia because they were forced to live in institutions. So Gabrielle is not the only person who's done this.
No, it's quite current.
Right, and there are people who don't get the care they need in institutions. They would prefer to live at home and direct their own care, but the programs don't exist for them to do that. And that's not inevitable. That's a choice that the government makes.
Yeah.
And it's
a
because,
society choice.
Right. It's because they turn everything that has to do with people with disabilities into a medical thing, and it doesn't have to be a medical thing.
Nope. Many people could be trained to do simple things, and even sometimes complex things.
Right, exactly. If you need suctioning, you don't have to have a nurse or a nurse's aide to do suctioning. You can train somebody to do suctioning, or, changing bandages or whatever. You don't need a nurse to do that. You can have somebody else do that. The group states in its missions that its mission is to defend our rights and liberties, discuss and resolve administrative problems. So obviously when you're living in an institution, there are administrative problems that come up. So
yeah, when you get in this institution as a permanent admittance, it's kind of difficult to go out.
Right, exactly. And if there are problems with the policies of the institution, then it's helpful to have people to talk to resolve those problems, help you think about ways to resolve the problems.
Yeah.
Their mission is also to develop residential resources adapted to our needs. So have not just having special set aside apartments for disabled people, but also to make sure that all buildings are built so that people with disabilities can live in them. To denounce the lack of home care programs, which is what we were talking about before, to show to the public that this is a choice that the government is making, and it's an expensive choice, and it's a choice that robs people of their dignity. To fight for an environment adapted to our needs. So it's not just the living situation that people need to change, but also the environment. So sidewalks and public transportation needs to be changed to be accessible.
Even if sidewalks are going to the ground, are
curb cuts.
Curb cuts. If at the ending there is 1 inch difference or even 2 inch,
right,
it's completely worthless.
Right.
You need to have less than 2 or 3 millimeters to be able run or drive over that if you have a wheelchair.
Right, exactly. And also maintaining the
sidewalk
sidewalks
in winter.
by shoveling in winter and
Yeah, and when it's icy, it's impossible for people to use a wheelchair, and it's very dangerous for pedestrians.
right, exactly. And also when people want to use the buses, often the bus is shoveled, and so people can't use the buses.
Yeah.
Their mission is also to demand care that is appropriate and personalized. So when aides are taught how to do things, they're taught to do things in only one particular way, and they're told this is the way you do it, except for that's a problem because everybody has a different need. People have different needs, and when the aide only will do it one way and you need it done another way, that's a big problem. So they need, it's important for the helpers to learn to do things the way the person needs it done, not just by the script.
Right now, it's not done like that. People learn one thing in the school and they have to learn this is the only way to do that.
Right.
Which is not the case.
Right, exactly. And finally, the last part of the mission is to provide mutual support.
Very important too.
Right. So AQCH members Jonathan Marchand and Daniel Pilote have made media appearances discussing the situation that forced them into institutional care and social priorities that deny people with disabilities the liberty to live independently in the community. The group invites those living in nursing homes and other residential facilities to provide testimonials about their experience living in institutions. And, you know, this is the kind of thing that the independent living movement in the United States and Canada was established to deal with. And that in the United States, it started more than 45 years ago. Independent living centers started to help people move out of institutions. And in Canada also, independent living centers started in the 1980s to help people move out of institutions. But as long as the government keeps putting more money into institutions than into independent living, people
and putting
can't move
no
out.
money in the hand of people who need it.
Right, exactly.
It was still a bad case.
Right, money really needs to follow the person where they want to live. For more information about the Quebec Alliance, contact Jonathan Marchand at 1-866-597-5485. That's 1-866-597-5485, or email support@aqch.info. That's support@aqch.info. Okay, our second subject is a frequently asked question. And 3 years ago, we did a series of frequently asked questions, and we're repeating it again because people may have missed it the first time.
So you could see that it's not new.
Right.
And we say the same thing before and after the law, and this is the truth.
Right, exactly. And we're addressing the kind of questions that we hear people ask about assisted suicide and euthanasia and the objections that people bring up. So the first one is, aren't we making people endure terrible pain and suffering if we don't allow doctors to help them die?
To make it clear, no.
Right, exactly. Although physical pain is often cited as the main reason for allowing assisted suicide, pain is rarely an important factor when people ask to die.
Yeah, very rarely.
Right. Only 25% of people who ask for assisted suicide in Oregon list pain or concern about pain as the reason they want to die.
And how many are really suffering from pain in this 25%?
Well, in the first couple of years that they tracked this information, they had pain and concerns about pain as separate questions. And it was only about 2% of people who said that actual pain was their concern.
So it's not an exaggeration if we say 3%.
Right, exactly. So when they put those two together, it rose up to 25%, and it's hovered there for this.
So it's
time.
unbelievable. Fear of pain
Right.
is weighting 23%, and even both together is weighting around 25%.
Right. In fact,
what is the main reason?
Right. In fact, physical pain can almost always be controlled. And even if it can't be controlled in most ways, palliative sedation can control physical pain.
Yeah, and there is no necessary to be continuous.
Right. Many people have watched a loved one die in pain without realizing that this outcome is dictated by the medical system. Doctors only have a few hours of training in pain management in their entire medical education, and they are unaware of the wide range of pain control methods, and they're often afraid of using narcotics to ease pain.
Yeah, it's a lot of doctors, let's say like that, a lot of doctors are afraid to get you as an addict.
Right.
But the trouble is, and I have a personal case to my father. The doctor refused to give him some pain medication, powerful one, let's say morphine or Dilaudid, because he was afraid to make him an addict at 86 years old.
Right.
Do you think it's very important that you become an addict or not, or you prefer to suffer? Think about a minute.
Right. And for a lot of doctors, pain, they don't think of pain as something that needs to be eased. They think of pain as a symptom of whatever is wrong, and they don't think to ease the pain as much as to use the pain as a way of diagnosing a problem. And
yeah, but in this time you are suffering, and sometimes you are suffering quite a lot.
Right.
And nobody has the same level of suffering depending of the ache or the sickness that you're suffering from.
Right, exactly. Illnesses and conditions that can't be cured, quote unquote, are a problem for the healthcare system that is based on results.
Yeah.
So results is you're supposed to go in the hospital and get cured, and if you can't get cured, like if you're a person with a disability,
it's a lost case. If it's
right.
a lost case, you are no more interested for doctor.
Right, exactly.
A lot of time, not all the time.
Right.
Be sure that we're not talking about in the everybody in the same bag. That's not the same thing.
Right. Right. And finally, only a small percentage of the population has access to effective palliative care.
That's true.
And that in Canada, that's about 30% of the population has access to good palliative care.
Even if it's more, let's say 35 or 40, doesn't really matter. The majority doesn't have access to palliative care.
Right. And the problem is that Canada, instead of solving that problem, they've said, okay, everybody's going to have access to assisted suicide, rather than solving the problem with palliative care.
It's faster, it's cost less, and it became to be accepted, you know. He had to suffer too much, kill him.
Right, right.
No.
Right, so Canada prefers to kill people rather than ease their pain. That's basically it. When people talk about suffering, they often mean the grief that comes with any major loss in life, such as losing the ability to walk or the loss of a spouse or child.
Yep.
And when somebody loses a child, they don't say, oh, your life is over. They say, well, you know, that's a terrible loss and you're going to have to get through it.
But you will go over,
right.
And the life goes on.
Right, exactly. But if people become disabled, oftentimes we hear, oh, your life is over, you can't do X, Y, Z anymore, you know, it's so terrible, your life is finished. And with encouragement and support, it's possible to pass through this grief to feelings of peace and acceptance. But if everybody's telling you that your life is over, you're not going to pass through those feelings.
Yep.
You're going to get stuck in those feelings, and you're going to agree with the people around you that say your life is over, and you're going to want to die. You know, you need the support of people who are expecting you to get through it and not expecting you to die.
Yeah.
Yeah. As well, dealing with unresolved personal and family issues can bring relief from anxiety and grief. So that's a lot of what palliative care people do, not just dealing with the physical pain, which they do, but they also help people deal with family issues that might come up when somebody's dying, or help people resolve family conflicts that might come up, or somebody might have personal issues that they haven't dealt with. And if they can resolve those issues, they might not want to die anymore. And finally, depression usually underlies suicidal feelings, whether the person has a terminal illness, a disability, or is able-bodied. And that can't be overemphasized.
Yeah, depression.
Right.
Let's say if anybody that you know who are kind of normal people say, oh, I want to die, what do you think about it? You will say, oh, we do have a depression, okay?
Right.
And you will try to fix it one way or another. Yeah. That's not the case now in the hospital in a lot of places, because if you are old or disabled, somebody will say, oh, you may be better dead, you know, you're suffering and you couldn't move, you couldn't do that, couldn't do that either. That's not the way to work with people.
Right.
You are still able to do that. There is a way to have a life, a proper life, without what you have lost.
Right. But the other thing that's a problem is there is not enough mental health care going around. And as happens a lot more and more in Europe, people who have chronic mental health problems are being allowed to be euthanized because they can't get care that they need, or the care that they're getting isn't helping them deal with their problems.
Yeah, it's a kind of a worldwide problem. There's not enough people who are able to at least try to treat mental illness.
Right. We put a lot more money into treating physical illness than we do to treating mental illness. And so people with depression can often go without enough help, and you know, it's a kind of suffering.
But you have access to assisted suicide or euthanasia.
Right, exactly.
Your choice.
Again, we'd rather kill people than ease their suffering. Another kind of suffering has to do with becoming disabled. In Oregon, the reasons people give most often for asking for assisted suicide have more to do with becoming disabled than they do with dying. They include losing the ability to do favorite activities at 89%.
Wow. Let's say suffering was 25%, or
Right.
fear of suffering.
Right.
Oh, over 89%. So
Right.
it's a big gap,
Right.
but the importance of the thing is not the same, you know. 89%, but it's not very important, and 25, and it's very important.
Right.
But you give the priority of the 25 over everybody else to kill people.
Right.
Oops.
Well, the other thing is that losing the ability to do favorite activities is a part of the grief and loss you have to go through when you become disabled. And, you know, if people expect you to be able to get through that and support you to get through that, then you will.
Yeah.
But if everybody says, oh no, that's worthy of dying, then...
And grief takes time.
Right. Right. Other reasons people give are a fear of becoming dependent, and that's 91% of people. Feeling...
Okay, and it's not very, very important, because most of the time, going to the bathroom, to go up or to go asleep, it's a job, not more. There is no lack of dignity to this need.
Right.
But what's the number again?
91%.
91%
are afraid of becoming dependent.
Over 25% who have fear of
pain,
and maybe 2 or 3% who are
right.
really have pain.
Right.
Against a law who target the strict, very, very compact minority.
Right. again, this is based on an idea that independence is the best thing, and if you can't be independent, then you're no good.
That's not
Then
true,
your
but
life is no good. So another reason that people give is feeling like a burden, and that's 41% of people give that reason.
against another very high level of percentage, against a very low, and this is not very important.
Right.
Being a burden is just meaning, if you think about it, that you count for somebody.
Right. Exactly. And it also has to do with the way social programs are organized, that people don't get enough support to help people at the end of life. And if the family doesn't have enough resources, that's not the fault of the person who's disabled. That's the fault of the society.
It's not being a burden.
Right, exactly. And the last is loss of dignity, which is 78%, and losing control of bodily functions, which is 48%.
Sorry, I have to drink a little of water.
But then again, those things are based on values that people hold about disability. And if people had other ideas about disability, they wouldn't be such important worries for people. Yet with architectural access and consumer-controlled home-based services, people with disabilities can stay active, integrated, and in control of their lives.
But nobody build those kind of building.
Well, it's
in Canada.
Right. In the United States, it's a little bit better because of the Americans with Disabilities Act. For a longer period of time, it's been a national mandate. So there's a little more accessibility in the United States.
So for the first floor, there is a law that a percentage of the apartment must be accessible when you build.
Right, exactly.
It doesn't cost more.
Right, right. And it hasn't solved all the problems, but it's made some more places accessible than are available here.
Yep.
People with disabilities worry that these disability-related reasons have become widely accepted as good enough to allow assisted suicide. This is manifest in the widely held belief, but incorrect belief, that it is better to be dead than disabled. Okay, that's it for our program, except to give you our coordinates.
Yep.
For more information on the subjects that we discuss here, you can go to our Facebook page at facebook.com/toujourvivant, not dead yet, all one word. Go to our website at tvndy.ca. You can email us at info@tv-ndy.ca, or you can follow me on Twitter @TVNDY. Thanks to Christian for helping out, and thanks to you for being there. We'll see you next time.
Take care. Bye.